Okay, folks, in this video, we'll see that which are the zero rate supplies and which supplies are classified as an exempt supply as per UAE VAT law. So the first and foremost, let's start with the exempt supplies. Now, you know that exempt supplies are supplies which will not be subject to VAT, and the flip side is that you cannot claim input VAT in case if it is incurred in connection with exempt supplies. So for example, if somebody is supplying the local transport service, the passenger service, passenger transport service, which includes your taxi services or all those metro and train and buses and all such supplies. So these are exempt supplies, and in case if somebody is incurring any expenses in relation to fuel or purchase of vehicle or any spare parts, anything, they cannot claim their input VAT. Next one is interest-based financial services. So here we do not speak about the fee-based financial services which are subject to VAT, but it's only interest-based services. So technically speaking, the interest from a banking service industry is not subject to VAT and it is exempt, and this makes actually things more complicated for somebody who is engaged in financial service industry, because if they are having fee-based services, those would be taxable, but if they are having interest-based services, those will be exempt. So they would be required to have apportionment of their input VAT, which in itself is another exercise. And same thing is, if you are selling life insurance, it would be exempt from VAT. Residential buildings are exempt, which will not be zero rated. So which means that there are certain residential buildings which would be zero rated. So I'll just bring you here. If you see that first sale or lease of the residential building is zero rated. So if there is a developer, he constructed the building in which you have apartments and all such things, and if it is supplied or sold within first 3 years of its completion, then it would be zero rated. But if it is supplied after 3 years, or it would be a secondary sale, then it would be an exempt supply. So in simple the way you can understand that the input VAT by a developer who is developing it for the first time for his onward selling would be zero rated, and he'll be able to claim all his input VAT. But if somebody who is a flip seller or who just buys and sell the properties which are flats, apartments or any such thing, those would be exempt supplies. Land, which is simply a bare land which is without any construction, no structure being built on that, would also be an exempt supply. Next is let's see about the zero rated supplies. So zero rated supplies include export of the goods or services, international air tickets, the crude oil, not for the end consumer, but if let's assume if oil refinery supplies it to the distributor, it would be zero rated. International goods shipments, so anything which is shipped or in connection to it, any expense incurred with with respect to the international goods shipment, it would also be zero rated. Supply of train, trams, vessels and airliners, all these are also zero rated. First sale or lease of the residential building, also, as we have already have a discussion on this. Bullion investment, which can be traded on the exchange and are having 99.9% purity, those are also zero rated. Jewelry, just to make sure that jewelry is standard rated because it's not traded on exchange and it's not a bullion investment. Approved healthcare product and services, all those which are approved by the Ministry of Health here in UAE would be zero rated. So normally your hospital expenditure, which includes your like OPD or inpatient, which are services which are approved by the Ministry of Health. Let's say if you walk into any pharmacy here, half of the items are probably some sort of the cosmetic item or stuff like that, those would still be subject to VAT. But medicines and healthcare services which are approved by Ministry of Health would be zero rated. Then there are certain specified education related services. So here you can see that we have included here schools. School fee would be zero rated. But if it is university education, in this case, unless until a university is owned by the state government, or at least 50% of its expenses are met by in the form of a grant by the state government here, it would be zero rated. Otherwise, the university education would be 5%, would be subject to 5% VAT.